Hello and welcome to this webinar on how to build a bulletproof cyber disaster recovery plan for your business. So a disaster recovery plan is often something that's overlooked, but it can be really, really important. The biggest threat to businesses across the globe is cybercrime, and their cybersecurity has to keep up with it because it's such a big issue. Every 34 seconds, a company is hacked or a victim of cybercrime in some part, but that's just the business. Cybercrime in itself is much, much higher. So it's all about trying to create and build a cyber disaster recovery plan that is going to help your business be protected for the future. So this webinar is aimed at small and medium businesses, but the differences for many businesses are the assets and the processes that need to be protected and compliance as well. So depending on what industry you're in, what company, often there is certain types of compliance and insurance that you also need to adhere to. So your disaster recovery plan should very much dovetail into that. So, and a quick disclosure alert, cybersecurity is constantly evolving. This webinar is filmed towards the end of 2024, so it's relevant as of up to today. But cybersecurity and cyber thefts and crimes do evolve. So, right, so the first thing we need to really do is understand what the risks are. So whenever you're building any type of plan, you need to really understand what that is. So what are the things that you need to be protected from, and how are you going to protect them? So the main things that are out there, and it's well worth doing a screenshot of this this slide, because these are the main ways that people are going to be able to get into your network, and it's whether they're going to hack your individual machine, hack the main servers, any which way. These are the main things. So brute force is your first one, which again is, if you've got things like antivirus, then a brute force attack, they're just going to try and get in through, whether it's the front door or the back door, but they'll try and just brute force their way in. They're going to try lots of different things to guess passwords to really push their way through. So brute force is the number one. Then the next one is around ransomware. So essentially they will grab hold of your data in some form and keep it. They will encrypt it and effectively hold it hostage, and you'll need to pay a premium to get the data back, if at all. So that can be really bad. Then the next is theft. Now this can be data theft in terms of someone hacks in and literally grabs and steals your data, or it can actually be from internal sources. So this is why it's always good to have that internal and external theft. And then how do you cover for each? Because if you've got a member of the team that, let's say, leaves in a fast way, then you really need to be covering off against that team member. So certainly theft from an internal perspective and an external. Often internal is much harder to cover off, but you need to make sure that you've got everything enabled within your databases so that you can at least see and have a paper trail of what's happened. The next one is keystroke logging. So again, the terminology for this is man in the middle. Essentially, if someone hacks into your machines and then they just sit there and watch what's going on, learn how you use data, learn how you talk to each other individually. They'll also learn the roles of the individual people, and then they will start mimicking the owners, often to trick accounts to pay bogus invoices and things. The next one is invoice mimicking. This is huge because invoice mimicking is all to do with where they will hack into your network and then hack into your accounts package, however you're sending invoices, and they can just do simple things like they'll just change the sort code and account number for their bank details, and then they'll log back out and you'll never know anyone was there until in a few months' time when you're chasing invoices and people say that they've paid them using the details. So that is quite it's a really sneaky one as well. Obviously, phishing attacks, denial of service. So essentially, they will log in and stop you from being able to use different services, whether they're cloud-based services or whether they're locally based. Malware and viruses, been around for a long time. Insider threats, say 0-day exploits. So again, things that are so new and modern that people aren't aware of them. So, you can be caught out by that. And obviously things like static antivirus products will catch you out because they're built on past lists, so not future and current lists. So 0-day exploits are one of the biggest fears of a lot of these security companies. So web application attacks, social engineering and AI, and Internet of Things, the final one, Internet of Things. This is all of these different items that are now online. So, anything attached to an Alexa or a Google Hub, anything at all that generally you need to download an app for to control, you are essentially giving access to potential hackers. So you just need to be really, really careful in terms of what you allow people to download and control. And essentially, why should you create a cyber disaster recovery plan? It's to stop you from losing clients, to stop you from demotivating the team. So again, if they, are a victim of a phishing attack, they're going to get unhappy. And also, essentially, it's to stop you losing money or going bust. So this is why you need to do it. So what are the things that will stop you working? You need to work this out because often a certain cyber attack might not really have much impact. So you really need to understand what things you need to protect. So is it your computers? Is it your software? Is it the machinery that your business uses? Is it the ability to invoice? Is it the fact of them being able to lock people out of their own machines, and then you'll be stuck and the data essentially will be lost? So first of all, you really need to understand, so what are the vulnerabilities? What are you trying to protect? And then what are the things that if any of the previous slide, if any of these things happen, then what impact and what things will stop working for you and the business? And then once you know those two, you then need to really list, right, what things can we not afford to lose? So an example might be, if you've got a general admin person and their machine gets hacked and they're maybe down and not able to use their machine for a day or two, that will be very frustrating and annoying, but let's face it, not the end of the world. Whereas let's say your entire database gets hacked, then no one can work. What impact does that have? So then when you're building out this disaster recovery plan, you really need to start with what's the worst at the top and then the nice to haves further down. But this will make sure that you put most effort into what's really, really important. So when it comes to data, for example, internal data, client data, current orders, what will really have big impacts that you really don't want to lose? And then the next is obviously around dual layer backups. So it's having that impact, but then also, do you have multi-layer backups that mean if one of the backups gets hacked, gets corrupt, is not accessible, is part of an encryption chain? All of these things mean that you need at least 2 backups and one that is separated from the network, because one of the biggest issues is ransomware, where it just encrypts all of your devices and all of your data that are all connected. So you just need to make sure of that. And then it's all about just building the plan and sharing it with everyone. And the plan doesn't have to be too in depth, depending on how big the business is, how many different layers, different databases that you're using, different types of machinery. It really depends on the complexity of the business, but generally don't let that stop you from creating at least a basic plan. And that's what it's all about. Just have a really, really basic plan for if one of the different things happens, how fast will you be able to get back up and running? But the most important thing is that everyone within the business knows what it is. So if anything bad happens, whether it's their fault, someone else's fault, they know the plan. And this is really, really important. So the plan doesn't have to be anything too elaborate. Just bullet points can be quite fine. So if a cyber attack happens, we do X, Y, and Z, and then it's just making sure that you cross-check those things. So for example, if an encryption virus happens and you've got a wide open network, then actually all of your machines are going to be out of use. So have you got any either encryption protection, so ransomware threat protection, or do you have separate machines on a separate network that aren't live connected, which means an encryption virus would only stop at that particular network, so in which case your secondary or third network would be okay. So then can everyone continue to work using different networks? So there's lots of different layers behind it, but generally it is just starting that plan in terms of, if this happened, what would happen to the business? How impacted would we be? And that's really what's important. It's a really good way of getting you thinking about it. And then the final thing that you really, really need to know is the timings and the risk is equal to the importance and the investment. So how fast do you need things up and running? What is the impact to the business and the cost? An example could be, let's say your run rate is £10,000 an hour. How much would you be willing to spend to ensure that that £10,000 an hour continues? And then you work back from there. If something happens and it's not really going to have much of an impact to the business, then obviously you wouldn't really need to pay or spend that much money on it. Because, you know, yes, you might want to change the configuration and things, but if an impact to a business is only in its hundreds, why would you spend potentially thousands over the year on protecting against that? On the other hand, it could be part of a total security package. So it really is just understanding the entire setup of whether it's just your computers, whether you're using other machinery that are connected to the computers, and overall just accessibility of databases and software. So, but you really need to just understand that and then build up the different layers of redundancy. So. Right, so that's pretty much it for the webinar. Do see that we've had a few people asking questions along the way, but this is my details if you do want to connect with me. So there's my email address, giles@syn-star.co.uk. Look me up on LinkedIn. So on there, just nice and easy, just Giles Cleverly on LinkedIn. Also, Syn-Star as a whole, we're on all the main social media platforms. We have got literally hundreds and hundreds of hours of content, whether it's videos on YouTube or our complete learning center on our website. So again, you can check out syn-star.co.uk /learning center. We just drop straight on the website at the top in the middle, learning center. So let's look at some questions. I've seen a few popping through as we've been doing the webinar. So how long should this take? Right, so I'm assuming that means to create a full cyber disaster recovery plan. It can take, depending on your knowledge and whether you sit down with, if you've got an internal IT personal manager or whether you've got an external company, I would generally say you need to sit down with the people that are doing the technology support for you at the moment, because a lot of the things they'll be able to answer the questions on a lot quicker. So I would, at the beginning of this webinar, we brought up all of the different areas that could be an issue. So again, if you wanted a screenshot of this page, and then I would just ask your tech support company. I mean, really, an IT company should already be protecting you against this. And when it comes to them offering you backup products and different cybersecurity protection, they should already be thinking about this. But if they're not, have this list available and then just go through it. Ask them, right, what's the protection against brute force? But if they go round the protection, So let's say you've got a firewall that they haven't updated, or the firmware's low, or something happens and someone is able to get into your network. So you then are a victim of a brute force attack. What could happen? What's the impact on the business? And then they should then give you the answer. And then the next question is, okay, well, what can we do to protect against this? And whether it's having multiple backups of whatever it is you're trying to protect, or it's actually improving your actual security to really try and stop a brute force attack. And then the same with encryption, theft, etc., etc. So theft might be, you know, if you've got different layers of admin credentials for your staff, so different people can look at different things, then you've got an amount of security already there. Often we see companies that just have, everyone has the same login, so they can all see the same thing. Well, then in which case, then if someone was to take a load of data and delete it, so it really depends how good your overall cybersecurity is. But generally, we would say it's at least an hour to begin with, just to do the fact finding, and then it's as long as it takes really, and who you're partnering with to do the work. So, but you know, you should have a relatively good idea of where the risks are within that first meeting, but it just depends who's running it for you to do this. So, right, next question. Do you have a template? So we kind of have templates. The reason I say kind of is because they are so different for each company. It all depends how your setup is. Have you got on-site servers? Have you got bespoke software? Have you got off-the-shelf software? Is everything cloud-based? Is, you know, all of these different things. And remember, cloud-based things doesn't mean that it's you know, bulletproof already. You know, they're as vulnerable as anyone else. If anything, you're more vulnerable because some hackers might go after the big names. So, you know, if you're using Microsoft, for example, they're one of the highest hit companies when it comes to attempted cyber attacks, because everyone wants to try and break into them. Well, if they get broken into, you're within that environment, you're then potentially at risk. So it really depends on your environment. But we do have different templates that should hopefully help the business. So again, you can, if you go onto our website, you can drop us a message on there and we can send that across to you. Or it is also available for download in our learning center. Okay, how often should it be updated? Good question. I mean, bare minimum annually, ideally every sort of 3 to 6 months. What we recommend is once you've got one in place, because as technology changes, you want to make sure that you're fully up to date on this. So if you start using a new piece of software, then you need to make sure that the plan includes that. Often it works in with others if it's very similar to existing software, but if it's something completely new and different, then you just want to make sure that you are covered some kind of backup somewhere. So, you know, it's really important that there is that extra protection. And if that company was to be hacked and you couldn't gain access to that data for 1, 2, 3 days, what would happen? What impact would be on the business? And this is what you need to plan and recover against. So, you know, is there a manual way that you can temporarily work so that at least you can still get the widgets out the door whilst your main database comes back up? So, and this is why you just need to make sure that you're constantly evolving it. Okay, so I think that's all the questions. Just like to say thank you very much for watching this webinar. We hope it was of use. Syn-Star can help with helping you, whether it's creating a disaster recovery plan or overall helping with your technology. So whether that's IT support or telecoms. And we very much are into cybersecurity. So anything cybersecurity related, love to have a conversation with you. It's all about the weakest link. And the more companies that we can help with their cybersecurity, the more we keep the hackers at bay.